Hello, I'm Landon Schlungen, and today we're going to finish up our intermediate algorithm scripting challenges on FreeCodeCamp. And the first one we're going to start off with today is called Steamroller. We have to turn this nested array into a single array with just the values in it. So we can't use the array.flat method like we did in one of our other challenges. So we're going to have to solve this with some type of recursion. We're going to start with a variable called flat, and that's going to equal an empty array dot concat, and then we're going to pass in our array. We're going to spread in our array into that. Now if I console log flat, we notice that it takes off one layer off of each of the nested arrays. So here it took off these two brackets and it took off the bracket around 3 and 4. But we can see that there's still a nested array inside this. So we're going to have to call this again and again and again until it gets down to flat. So what we want to do is we want to do flat.sum. We're going to check if any of these elements are an array. So we're going to do array.isArray. So we're checking if any of them are an array, and if they are, then we want to steamroll the array again. So steamroll array, pass in our flat array this time, our flatter array. And then otherwise, if there's not an array inside this, then we just want to return flat. And then we can just return this. And then if I console log steamroll array, we can see that we flattened it out successfully. So that's all we have to do for this one, and let's move on. Binary agents. For this challenge, we want to turn the binary code into letters. So in this case, it should return aren't bonfires fun. So first we have to convert our binary into our base 10, like digits like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the way we do this is we realize that the 1 here, that's basically 2 to the 0. And then when converting binary, it goes 2 to the 0, then 2 to the 1, and then 2 to the 2 squared, and then 2 cubed, and so on. And if there's a 1 there, then we add it in. So for example, if we had a string of 0, 1, 0, 1, this would equal our 2 to the 0 power plus 2 to the second power, which equals 5. And we're starting at the end here, so since there's a 1 here, then it's 2 to the 0, which is just 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. And then we skip this one. Otherwise, it would be 2 to the first power, which is 2. But we skip that one because it's 0. And then we go on to this 1 here. And that's 2 to the power of 2, which is 4. And then we add them up and we get 5. If this was 1 here, then we would do 2 to the third, which is 8. And we would add that in too. So if this was 1, then we go plus 2 to the third. And then we'd get 13 here. And you can actually make like all base 10 numbers using this method, or like using binary. So this is what we're going to do to start off this challenge. We're going to try and convert this into a base 10 number. So we're going to start with let binary array equal string.split, and we're going to split it every space. And then we're going to have our base 10 numbers in an array, but empty array for now. And then we're going to use 2 for loops here. Let I equal 0, I less than binary array dot length, I plus plus. And then we're going to have another for loop in here for let j equal 0, j less than binary array ij, or binary array I dot length, j plus plus. Open that up. And then we're going to have 2 variables here. We're going to have let base 10 number equal 0 by default. And we're going to have our power, and that's going to equal binary array of I dot length to start off with. And then inside this for loop, this is where the magic happens. So we're going to get our base 10 number, and we're going to add in for each one of these numbers. So we're going to start at 0 here, and then we're going to work our way over. We're going to do binary array ij, so that's getting either a 1 or a 0. If that equals 1, then what we want to do is we want to do math.pow 2 to the power minus 1, and then otherwise we just want 0. And then once this runs once, we want to do power minus minus, so that power decrements every time. And then we'll do base 10 nums dot push, and we'll push on our base number, or our base 10 number. So now if I console log our base 10 nums, you can see we get our numbers here. So this one equals 65, and then it goes 114, and yeah, so on. So the way this works here is we grab our length, which is 8. There's 8 of these characters in one of these blocks. So at the start, power is going to equal 8. And if it's a 1 there, then we want to do math.pow 2 and 7. So it'd be 2 to the 7th power, which is a pretty big number. So if I made this 1 here, then that first number is actually pretty big. And if these are all ones, then it turns into 255, I believe. But yeah, it checks that one, and then it goes on to the next one, except this time the power is going to equal 7. So then it's going to do math.pow to 6, 2 to the 6th power, and then until it gets down to the end where it will do math.pow 2 to the 0 if there's a 1 there, and otherwise it'll just add 0. And then we reset our base 10 number for the next one after we push it on. So now that we have our array of base 10 numbers, we can do let message equal our base 10 numbers dot map, and we're going to map each number, and we're going to do this string dot from char code num. So what this does is it gives us the character, so the actual like A, B, C character that this number corresponds to. So now if I console log our message, you'll see that the number that was here turned into an A. So there's only one thing to do now. Just do a message.join and we're good to go. Just console log the whole thing here, and we get aren't bonfires fun, which is what we should be getting. So yeah, basically the trick here is knowing how to convert binary into base 10, and then knowing how to convert base 10 numbers into the character using from char code from char code. So let's run this. Sweet. Everything be true. For this challenge, we want to see if this key of sex here, if all of its corresponding values are truthy. In this case, they all are, because they're all a string. If, say, one of these was false, then it would have to return false. If this was 0, it would also have to return false. And also, if this was not even here, then it would be false as well. So this one is actually pretty easy. All we have to do is do a for loop on our collection. So let I equal 0, I less than collection.length, I plus plus. And then we can do if our collection of I, so we're grabbing each object here, and then we're going to grab the pre, which is this part, the sex, so that'll grab male out of here. So if male, we actually want to check if there's not male there. So if that is false, then this will be true. This if statement will be true, and we want to return false. And then otherwise, if it gets through that without returning false at all, then we want to return true. And that's all it is. Pretty simple. Console log this quick. And there we see we get false because there's no sex part in here. If we do have a sex part, female, then it turns to true. If this is 0, then it'll be false. If it's false, it'll be false. This is pretty cool. Let's move on. Cool. Arguments optional for this challenge. If we're given 2 parameters, we just want to add them together and return it. But if we're given 1 parameter, say just 2, then we want to return a function that will add in the next number when it's called. So as this is saying here, if we have just 2 here, then we want it to be the next time we call, we want it to return a function that the next time we call with a number, it'll add those 2 numbers together. So yeah, this one's just confusing because we have to return a function. But to start this one off, we want to take in our args. So ... args. That'll take in all of our arguments. And then we also want to check that they are for sure a number and not a string or an array or anything. So to do that, we're going to do for let I equal 0, do our standard for loop here. We're going to loop through the arguments and check if type of args I does not equal number. Then we just want to return undefined, like it says here. A string should return undefined. And then we also want to check if there's just one argument being passed, then we want to return a function. So if args.length equals 1, then we want to return our arrow function. We're going to do an arrow function that takes in a number. And we also have to check if this second parameter is for sure a number and not an array like down here. So we're going to kind of do the same thing we did right here, except without the for loop. We're just going to grab this part and bring it down here, except we're just going to do if type of num is not a number, return undefined. Otherwise, if that passes, we want to return our args of 0 plus our number. Now, the last condition to check is if they're 2 numbers like this, and that's pretty simple. Just return args 0 plus args 1, and that should be all we have to do for this one. So there we go, 2 and 3 is 5. If for some reason this is an array here, then we get undefined. If that's not there, then we get a function, and we can call that function with another number like so. That gives us 5. If this is an array here, then it returns undefined. So it handles all the cases. Let's run it. Sweet. Make a person. So this challenge is basically so that we understand our object-oriented programming principles. We want to make an object with these methods inside of it. So the way we can go about this is by first declaring a variable of full name equal to first and last that's being passed in. So now full name will equal Bob Ross. And now we want to put these methods in here. So I will just copy these, bring them over. I'll delete this method that they have here. And we want to have this dot on all of these. And then we can make these functions arrow functions. So we might as well do that. So this dot get first name, we want to return our full name dot split at the space and grab the first part of it. So in arrow functions, if you don't have brackets, then you don't need the return statement. So in this case, get first name, it'll return this value, even though there's no like explicit return here. So for get last name, it's the same thing basically, except instead of a 0, it's a 1 at the end. Get full name, it'll just return, I'll also delete these parentheses. Get full name, it'll just return our full name. Now we have our setters. So for set first name, we take in a first and we do our arrow function. This time I'll open it up with brackets, and setters don't return stuff usually. They just change what's inside the class or inside the object. So I'll set full name equal to our first name. So first, the one that we pass in, plus a space, and then plus this dot get last name. So that'll call this function, which gets our last name. And then I'll just do dot join on it at the end. And that will change our full name to have this new first name that's being passed in. Last is pretty similar, or set last name is pretty similar. Just copy this down. And then instead of first here, we're gonna do this dot get first name. And then instead of this dot get last name, we're just gonna have last. And that should work for that. Set full name. This one's pretty simple. We just set full name equal to first and last. That's being passed in. And now it should pass all these tests. Let's try some of these here. So here I am setting the first name to Haskell, and then I am console logging the full name, which is now Haskell Ross instead of Bob Ross. So it kept the last name, but it just changed the first name, and that works. So, and it should work for all the others as well. So let's go ahead and move on. Map the debris. This challenge is very confusing because they don't give you very much like instruction. They basically just say, hey, go look on this Wikipedia page to know how to do it. And the Wikipedia page is really confusing as well. But I tried to figure it out and I got pretty close to it, but I still had to use a hint for just one part of it. Basically what we have to do is we have to change this average alt value to be the orbital period, and we have to do some type of calculation to get there. So the way we can do this is, first of all, we can change this var to a const, since these are constants. We want to have our answer equal to array.map. We're going to map each object in this array, and we're going to do let period. So this is going to be our orbital period. It's going to equal this this formula basically, 2 times math.pi, so that'll be 3.1415 pi, times math.square root of math.pow earth radius plus the alt object dot average alt, and we're going to cube that, and then we're going to divide it by 3, or by we're going to divide it by gm, so this value up here. So yeah, that's a pretty confusing formula. And then we want to take our period and then round it, so we just do math.round our period, otherwise it'll have decimals. And then we can return our new object of name, our alt object.name, and our orbital period, and we'll pass in our period. And now when I console log this, if I return answer as well. So yeah, the console log brings up 86,400, which is the correct answer here. If I put this one in here, then we get 5557, which is right here. We get 5734 right here, and the same for this one, that right there. So yeah, in my opinion, this one is not very useful for learning, but there's a lot of challenges out there that have us use formulas. But yeah, let's just move on. And there we go, we completed the intermediate JavaScript scripting challenges. Next up we have the JavaScript algorithms and data structures projects. And we'll be making a palindrome checker, Roman numeral converter, Caesar cipher, telephone number validator, and cash register. These ones aren't really projects, as they are more so just more algorithm challenges. They're just a little bit harder algorithm challenges, I would say. So we'll do that next time, and until then, I'll see you later.